Malik looked straight at me across the dinner table and said, "Mom, the bathroom's gross. Go clean it now." And those words sliced through the room so sharply that even the candles seemed to flicker in fear. It was in that moment, still within the echo of his command, that something inside me cracked in a way I could never repair, a quiet but final breaking that felt like the opening of a door I had kept locked for decades. The smell of roasted chicken still hung in the air, mingling with the sweet warmth of the peach cobbler I had baked earlier that afternoon. Tasha, Malik's new girlfriend, sat across from me, twirling the stem of her wine glass, her long nails tapping lightly as if to distract from her discomfort. She lifted her eyebrows but kept her lips pressed in a frozen smile, the kind you make when you witness a line being crossed, but pretend you didn't see it. "Mom?" Malik repeated, his tone rising with the agitated impatience of a spoiled child rather than a grown man nearing 40. "Did you hear me? Go clean it." He didn't even look embarrassed. Not for himself, not for me, not for the fact that he had turned our home, my home, into a stage for humiliating me in front of a woman he barely knew. I didn't move. I just stared at him, and in that stillness I felt years gathering inside me like heavy stones at the bottom of a river. "What?" he snapped, frowning. "Why are you staring at me like that?" I wasn't staring. I was seeing him clearly for the first time in years. Seeing the man he had become because I had walked on aching feet to make his path smooth. Seeing the boy who never learned to stand on his own because I never let him. Seeing the adult who expected me to bow because I had taught him I would. He wasn't a monster. Monsters don't create themselves. Mothers do. Not out of malice, but out of misguided love. Tasha leaned closer to him and whispered, "Maybe she's tired. She cooked all day, Malik." "She likes it," he said firmly, waving her off. "Mom's always cleaning. It relaxes her. She'll get to it." Relaxed. Yes, because nothing soothed my aging bones quite like bending over toilets and scrubbing floors after making full meals for someone old enough to be a father himself. But I said nothing. My silence wasn't surrender this time. It was awakening. Before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe so I can share more stories with you. I pushed my chair back. The scrape of wood against wood was louder than his command. Louder than his disrespect. Louder than every year I had swallowed my own needs because I thought motherhood demanded it. I stood and the room tilted, not because I was dizzy, but because something inside me shifted. A weight lifted. A chain loosened. A window opened in a house I hadn't realized was suffocating me. "Mom, where are you going?" Malik demanded, as though I were abandoning a chore instead of reclaiming my humanity. I didn't answer, not verbally. Instead, I turned and walked down the hallway toward my bedroom, each step feeling like a sentence in a language I was finally remembering how to speak. Behind me, I heard Tasha murmur, "Malik, I think she's hurt." "Hurt? She's being dramatic," he scoffed. "Just let her go calm down. She'll be fine tomorrow." Tomorrow, for 37 years, tomorrow had always been the promise I made to myself. Tomorrow I'll rest. Tomorrow I'll take care of myself. Tomorrow Malik will appreciate me. Tomorrow things will change. I realized then that tomorrow had never been real, but tonight was. In my bedroom, the light from the small lamp washed everything in a warm, amber glow. My quilt, the one I had stitched by hand during the winter after Samuel died, sat folded neatly at the edge of the bed. For years it had been a comfort to me, wrapping my broken heart when grief clawed at my ribs. I touched it gently, thinking of Samuel's voice, his calming presence, the way he used to tell Malik, "Respect your mother. She has the strength of 10 men." If Samuel had lived, maybe Malik would have listened. Or maybe not. I would never know. I opened the closet and pulled out a black suitcase I had bought 15 years earlier for a trip I never took. I'd always told myself I'd travel someday, but someday is a thief when you hand your life to someone who never learns to stand without leaning on you. I placed the suitcase on the bed. The zipper hissed open like a snake waking from hibernation. I began packing with deliberate slowness, not out of hesitation, but out of reverence. 2 blouses, a cardigan, comfortable slacks, a nightgown, my toiletries, a photograph of Samuel and me from our honeymoon in Martha's Vineyard, my documents. And then, almost as an afterthought, I reached for the envelope containing my savings, small but hard-earned. A few $1,000s tucked away from years of baking for neighbors during holidays. I had always planned to give it to Malik one day, but tonight I realized I had mistaken sacrifice for love. Love gives, yes, but it should never erase the giver. When everything was packed, I took one last look around the room. The walls held pictures of Malik at every age, his school portraits, his birthday parties, his high school graduation, memories of a boy who once adored me, who clung to my skirts and cried when I left for work. I touched one of the frames, an old photo of him at 5 years old, holding a paper crown on his head. "My little king," I whispered. But kings grow, or at least they should. I left the room quietly, my suitcase rolling softly behind me. As I passed the dining room, Malik's voice reached me again. "Tasha, she'll be fine," he said. "Just give her time. She always comes around." Not this time. I slipped on my shoes near the door. The soft leather hugged my feet like reassurance. For a second, I waited. Maybe for him to call my name, maybe for guilt to drag me back into the shadows of that house. But silence answered instead. I opened the door and stepped out into the night air. Brooklyn breathed around me. Cars passing, people talking, music from an open window somewhere nearby. The city was alive, and for the first time in years, so was I. A taxi slowed as I raised my hand. "Bronx," I said when the driver asked where to. He nodded. "Hop in." I climbed into the back seat, the upholstery cool against my palms. As the cab pulled away, I didn't look back at the house. Not once. I let it shrink into the distance like the final page of a chapter that had taken me decades to finish. The ride to the Bronx carried me through memories I wasn't ready to face, but didn't need to hide from anymore. I watched the city lights smear across the windows like brush strokes of possibility, each one reminding me I still had time. Time to live, time to breathe, time to become something more than the mother of a man who never grew up. When the cab stopped outside Denise's building, I felt a tremor of uncertainty run through me. Independence tasted new, like biting into a fruit you've never tried before, sweet, strange, and slightly frightening. I knocked softly. Within seconds, the door flew open. "Clara?" Denise gasped, taking in my suitcase, my trembling shoulders, the shadow of sorrow behind my eyes. What happened? The sight of her cracked something inside me. She pulled me into her arms, holding me the way only an older sister can. Strong enough to catch you, gentle enough to let you break. We didn't speak for a long moment. We just stood in her doorway while the corridor light buzzed overhead and someone down the hall laughed loudly at a television show. Finally, she guided me inside and sat me at her kitchen table, the vinyl tablecloth warm under my palms. She poured us chamomile tea, though mine grew cold without being touched. When I finished telling her everything, every bitter detail of the dinner, every word Malik had thrown at me, she took my hands again. "You're staying here," she said firmly, "as long as you need, as long as you want." I nodded, grateful beyond words. That night, lying in her spare bedroom with its pale yellow curtains and its soft, clean sheets, I felt the exhaustion seep into my bones. Decades of fatigue poured through me like water finding cracks in a dam. I stared at the ceiling, half expecting regret to creep in beside me, but it didn't. Instead, there was silence. Gentle, soft, welcoming. The kind of silence that makes room for new beginnings. I didn't know then what my future would look like. I didn't know about the orders I would bake from Denise's kitchen, or the little storefront on 138th Street that would one day carry my name. I didn't know that Malik would crumble, then rebuild, then return to me humbled and human. I only knew this. I wasn't going back. Not to the house. Not to the life I had outgrown. That night, I closed my eyes and took my first breath as a free woman. When I woke up the next morning in Denise's spare bedroom, the light filtering through the pale yellow curtains felt different. Warmer, kinder, almost as if it had been waiting for me to finally step into it. My body was stiff from the strain of the previous night, but for the first time in decades, I didn't wake to the sound of Malik's footsteps, his demands, his questions, or the constant weight of his expectations pressing against my chest before my feet even touched the floor. Instead, I lay still for a moment, letting myself float in the quiet, letting my lungs expand without fear that someone would immediately ask me for something. Denise's apartment always smelled faintly of jasmine and old books, a scent I used to associate with comfort when we were growing up. She had been my protector long before Samuel came into my life, long before I learned what a healthy love could feel like. After he died, I drifted so far into motherhood that I forgot I had been a woman first, someone deserving of rest, joy, gentleness. Denise's home reminded me of that woman, the one I used to be before life condensed into a vision of Malik, his needs, his moods, his future. I swung my legs out of bed, feeling the cool floor beneath my feet, and shuffled toward the kitchen. Denise was already there, her back to the stove as she flipped pancakes with practiced ease. She wore her pink robe, the one she'd had for nearly 20 years but refused to throw out because it still had life in it. Denise was like that. She held on to things that deserved it, and she let go of the rest with a clarity I envied. "Well, look who decided to wake up," she said softly, glancing at me over her shoulder. Her voice held no judgment, no pity, just warmth. "I didn't sleep much," I admitted, easing myself into a chair at the table. "I figured," she replied, "but you look lighter." Lighter. The word fluttered through me like a delicate bird finally released from a cage. I didn't know if I believed it yet, but I wanted to. Denise poured me a cup of coffee, real coffee, not the instant stuff Malik insisted was good enough, though he never drank it himself. I held the mug between my palms, letting the heat seep into my fingers. It struck me then how long it had been since anyone had made me breakfast. Years, maybe decades. I had cooked 3 meals a day, every day, without pause or acknowledgement, because I was good at it, because it was just my role, because Malik had learned early that he didn't need to lift a finger as long as I hovered behind him, catching every crumb he dropped. "Are you hungry?" Denise asked, sliding a plate of pancakes toward me. "I don't know," I said truthfully, though the smell made my stomach grumble. I've never been good at feeling hunger. Not my own, at least. Denise sat across from me and gave my hand a squeeze. "Then you'll learn now. Everything starts now." The conviction in her voice startled me, not because it was unexpected, but because I realized how desperately I needed someone to believe I could start over at 69. For most of my life, I had only been told what I needed to do for others. Not once had anyone asked what I wanted for myself. As we ate, Denise asked questions gently, giving me space to answer or stay silent. I told her about Malik's laziness, his dependence, the way he manipulated me through guilt, the way he blamed every job loss on the world conspiring against him. I told her about Tasha, a beautiful young woman with a restless smile, and how embarrassed I had been at the dinner table, not because of Tasha's presence, but because of Malik's audacity. Denise listened quietly, her lips tightening every time my voice faltered. At one point she asked, "Do you think he realized what he was doing?" I sighed, "No, but that's the problem. I raised him to believe my labor, my time, my health, they all belong to him. And now you don't." The simplicity of her statement washed over me like a wave. She was right. I didn't. Not anymore. I had stepped out of that house and out of that life. I was no longer a servant to my own child. I was something new, someone unrecognizable even to myself. After breakfast, Denise insisted I shower and put on one of her soft house dresses. I hadn't worn anything that comfortable in years because Malik used to tease me whenever I dressed casually, saying things like, "Mom, why do you dress like an old lady?" As if I weren't one. As if aging were an insult, a failure, a crime committed deliberately to inconvenience him. I wore my sturdy dresses and cardigans mostly because they were functional for cooking and cleaning, but also because they made me invisible, safe, forgettable. But in Denise's dress, I felt seen in a way that startled me. The cotton brushed against my skin with a softness that reminded me of gentler times, picnics with Samuel, afternoons baking pies just for fun, mornings when Malik was little and used to watch me mix batter with wide-eyed fascination. When I stepped out of the bathroom, hair still damp, Denise handed me a small plate of sliced fruit. "Eat," she said, "then we'll talk about what's next." I felt a tremor of anxiety. "I don't know what's next," I whispered. "You don't need to," she replied. "You just need to trust that the next step will show up when you're ready." It sounded like the kind of thing people say to comfort you, but somehow, coming from Denise, it felt true. Later that afternoon, I sat by the window in the living room, watching the Bronx hum to life below. Children bounced basketballs on the sidewalk. Neighbors chatted on stoops. Music drifted from open windows. Soft R&B from one apartment, reggaeton from another. Life was moving, pulsing, thriving. And for once, I wasn't on the sidelines serving someone else. I was inside my own story again. Denise brought me a notebook and a pen. "What's this for?" I asked. "Write down everything you feel," she said. "All the things you never had time to process. Write your grief, your anger, your guilt, your relief. Write until your hand hurts." I stared at the blank page for a long time. I didn't know where to begin, so I wrote the first thing that came to mind. "I am tired." The words looked fragile on the paper, like a confession whispered after years of silence. But once they were there, more came. I gave too much. I lost myself. I loved him so much I disappeared. And then, surprisingly, I want my life back. Writing those words made my throat tighten with emotion. It felt like opening a door I had barricaded shut long ago. Denise came back later, glanced at the open notebook, and nodded approvingly. "That's a good start," she said. We spent the rest of the day sorting through possibilities, what I might do next, where I might rebuild. Denise suggested I take time to rest first, but she also reminded me that I had skills I had never used for myself. Baking had been my life's work, but not in the way that fulfilled me. I realized then that I had poured every ounce of my talent into raising Malik, into creating a home he never appreciated, into feeding him meals he devoured without gratitude. "What if you baked again?" Denise asked, "but this time for yourself?" The thought filled me with both excitement and fear. "Who would buy from me?" I asked. Denise gave me a look that could have whipped sense into a stone. "Everyone. You're Clara Jefferson. People don't forget your pies." She wasn't wrong. I had always been known in our old neighborhood for my baking. My pecan pie had nearly caused a brawl at a block party once because two families each claimed the last slice. My carrot cake had been requested every Easter, Thanksgiving, and birthday. My cinnamon rolls sold out at the cafe faster than any other item. But baking for others, customers, felt risky. New. Exposed. Still, the idea settled into my mind like a seed primed for rain. That evening, I called a cab to return to Brooklyn, not to move back in, but to collect the rest of my belongings. As the car rolled down the familiar streets, a tense pressure built in my chest. I didn't know what I would find. Anger? Tears? Indifference? When I walked up the front steps, the porch light was off. The house felt colder, darker, as if it knew I no longer belonged to it. I had a spare key, but I knocked anyway, out of habit more than courtesy. Malik opened the door. He looked unprepared, sleepy, confused. His hair stuck up in messy tufts, and his eyes were bloodshot as if he'd been up all night. I saw panic flicker across his face when he realized I wasn't a dream or a hallucination. "Mom?" he whispered. You actually left?" His shock stung more than his words from the previous night. He had believed, truly believed, that I was incapable of walking away, that I had no life, no will, no spine outside of his orbit. "Yes," I said simply. My voice didn't waver. His lips parted in disbelief. "Why?" he asked. That single word revealed everything. He didn't understand. He had never understood. He had never bothered to. I stepped inside, ignoring his question, and walked straight to my room. He followed, stumbling over his own confusion. "Mom, hold on," he said breathlessly. "Can we talk? Can you just—" I turned to face him. For the first time in years, I looked at him without guilt, without fear of hurting his feelings, without cushioning every truth for his fragile ego. He was a grown man. He needed to hear me. "No, Malik," I said softly. "Not now. I came only for my things. I am not here to stay." My calmness rattled him more than anger ever could. "But where are you going to live?" he asked, as if the idea of me existing without him were impossible. "With Denise," I said. His face contorted with disbelief, then childish indignation. "You're choosing her over me?" "No," I said. "I'm choosing me." He looked stunned by the idea that I existed as someone separate from him. I packed the rest of my belongings in silence. He hovered nearby, watching me as though hoping I would suddenly collapse into his arms and beg for forgiveness. But I didn't, and each minute that passed made his panic grow. When I reached the doorway with my bags, he whispered, "Mom, don't go." But that plea came far too late. It should have come years ago when I needed it, when I needed him. I turned my head slightly. "Take care of yourself," I said. Then I walked out. The next days at Denise's were quiet but transformative. She cleared space in her kitchen for me to bake, insisting that I reclaim the parts of myself I had abandoned. At first, my hands trembled when I cracked eggs into a bowl, as if I had forgotten how to bake for joy rather than obligation. But soon the muscle memory returned. The scent of vanilla awakened something tender in me. The warmth of the oven felt like a heartbeat restarting. The soft crumble of dough beneath my fingers reminded me of every dream I had once tucked away. Denise tasted the first batch of cupcakes I made, her eyes widening with delight. "Clara," she said, "these are better than ever." And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. By the end of that week, neighbors were asking if I sold baked goods. Denise gave out my number before I even agreed. Orders began rolling in, small at first, then steady, then impossible to ignore. With each cupcake, each pie, each loaf of banana bread, I felt myself returning, piece by piece, like a mosaic being restored. I wasn't just surviving, I was blooming. And I had no idea that what I was building in Denise's kitchen would grow into something that would reshape both my life and Malik's in ways neither of us could have imagined. In the weeks that followed, Denise's kitchen transformed into something of a sanctuary for me, though I didn't recognize it as such at first. At the beginning, I still half expected Malik to call me every morning, demanding to know when I was coming home, or insisting he hadn't meant to hurt me. But the phone remained silent. On the rare occasion it rang, it was never him. At first, that absence cut me, then confused me, and finally it left me with a strange sense of relief. Silence was not empty, I discovered. Silence was space. Space for breath, for thought, for rediscovery. Denise's neighbors began knocking on the door more frequently, some shyly, others boldly, each with a similar hesitant question. "Are you the one who made that banana loaf?" Or, "Do you still have any of those cinnamon rolls from yesterday?" Their eagerness made me blush, though not because I didn't want the attention. It was because I realized how much I had missed being seen. Not as someone's mother or someone's caretaker or someone's backup plan, but as someone who had a gift of her own. And I did have a gift. I had buried it beneath laundry piles and late-night dinners and Malik's endless demands, but it had always been there. Baking was the one place where my hands knew what to do, even when my heart was lost. Denise set up a small folding table in front of her building one Saturday morning and insisted we try selling some pastries just to see what would happen. I protested at first, feeling ridiculous, a nearly 70-year-old woman with a makeshift bakery stand on the sidewalk. But Denise had the stubbornness of a bulldozer when she believed in something. "Just trust me," she said as she placed a tray of cupcakes beside a stack of sweet potato pies. "If it doesn't work, we'll eat everything ourselves." Her confidence was so infectious, I found myself laughing. We arranged the pastries neatly, and before we had fully stepped back, a small line formed. The cupcakes went first. Then the pies disappeared faster than we could slice them. People asked for business cards, for menus, for order forms. When we sold out, completely sold out, in under 2 hours, I nearly cried. "That's your talent," Denise told me, packing up the empty containers, "and your future." I didn't argue. I couldn't. A small spark lit inside me, fragile but undeniable, like the first flame of a candle in a dark room. It surprised me how much joy I felt watching people walk away holding something I had made. It was more than satisfaction. It was reclaiming a part of myself I had abandoned long ago. The next week brought more orders. Denise's number circulated around the neighborhood like warm gossip. Soon I was baking for birthday parties, church gatherings, baby showers, and block meetings. And the more I baked, the more alive I felt. My shoulders straightened, my voice steadied. My hands, once trembling with the tremors of exhaustion and age, moved with purpose again. One afternoon, as I was preparing 3 trays of peach cobbler for a local community event, I felt Denise watching me. When I looked up, she was leaning against the counter, smiling with that deep, knowing smile that only older sisters seem to possess. "What is it?" I asked. "You look different," she said. "Different how?" Like someone who remembered she wasn't born only to serve other people. I let out a slow breath. I didn't even know how lost I was. "You weren't lost," she corrected. "You were buried. There's a difference." Her words struck something inside me. Not quite pain, but the tender ache of truth. That evening, as I lay in the guest bed, I let her words settle into the corners of my mind. Buried, not lost. Buried things can be unearthed, revived, brought back to light. Lost things sometimes disappear forever. I realized how grateful I was that something inside me, Whatever small seed of strength had survived had pushed its way upward that night at the dinner table. If I had not stood up and walked to my bedroom, if I had not packed that small suitcase, if I had not stepped into that taxi, I might have grown old and died inside that house without ever remembering I once had dreams. The next few months moved like a whirlwind. Baking orders multiplied until Denise's kitchen felt too small. Her counters overflowed with bags of flour, stacks of pie tins, cooling racks, and rows of labeled containers. There were days I baked for 12 hours straight, stopping only to stretch my aching back or drink a cup of tea. But the exhaustion was different. It was the exhaustion of creation, not servitude. My hands worked for myself, not for someone who never lifted his own. One morning, as I was measuring brown sugar, Denise handed me a folded newspaper. "Page 6, she said with a twinkle in her eye. I wiped my hands on my apron and opened it. My heart nearly stopped when I saw the small feature. The Bronx Baker on the rise, homemade comfort in every slice. The article described my pastries, my dedication, and the sudden popularity I'd found in the neighborhood. It even included a picture of me smiling timidly behind a table of cupcakes and pies. I didn't even remember the photo being taken. "Denise," I whispered, staring at the page, This can't be real." "It's very real," she said, "and it's only the beginning." She was right. Within 2 weeks of the article, I began receiving calls from people across the Bronx. Small restaurants, cafes, even a school principal who wanted to hire me for a teacher appreciation event. Denise and I took the subway to look at small storefronts just for fun at first, but the fun turned into planning, and the planning turned into possibility. One in particular, on 138th Street, felt like destiny. It was an old shoe repair shop that had been vacant for years, with dusty windows, creaky floorboards, and peeling paint. But the moment I stepped inside, I felt something warm in my chest. The air smelled of leather and old stories, and I knew instantly that this space wanted to be transformed. I could almost picture the bakery already, the counters, the display cases, the soft lighting, a place not just for pastries, but for redemption. Redemption. The word whispered through me like a secret. I had not gone looking for revenge against Malik, though a part of me still carried anger, but I had gone looking for myself. And what I found felt so much deeper than I ever expected. The rent was high, but not impossible. My savings covered part of it, and Denise insisted on helping with the rest. She refused to hear my protests. "You've spent your whole life giving," she said. "Let me give something back for once." I couldn't refuse her. I didn't want to. 2 months later, the old shoe shop officially became mine. Turning it into a bakery was messy, expensive, and exhausting. But every brushstroke of paint, every scrubbed wall, every repaired pipe felt like reclaiming ownership of my future. I spent hours choosing colors, finally settling on warm cream walls with a soft blue trim, and days picking out equipment. Denise helped me find affordable mixers, ovens, and glass cases. The entire neighborhood watched the transformation with curiosity and excitement, stopping by to ask when we would open. The night before the bakery opened, I stood in the middle of the empty space, surrounded by the low hum of the new refrigerators and the faint scent of fresh paint. I closed my eyes and imagined Samuel standing beside me. I pictured him smiling proudly, saying something like, "Look at you, Clara, still soft, but stronger than ever." The thought made my throat tighten with a strange mixture of grief and gratitude. When we finally opened, the line stretched around the block. Customers filled the tiny bakery from morning until evening, leaving with boxes of cupcakes, pies, cookies, and sweet breads. Some came out of curiosity, others out of loyalty, and some simply wanted a taste of the love they said they could feel in the crusts and crumbs. I saw old men grin like children tasting their grandmother's recipes, teenagers devouring slices of cake with blissful abandon, and mothers buying pies to bring to family dinners. People lingered in the shop longer than necessary, chatting with me, sharing stories, asking about my journey. One woman placed her hand on mine and said, "Your baking tastes like hope." That sentence stayed with me for weeks. During all this time, Malik remained absent. He never called, never visited, never sent a message. I didn't know if he was angry, ashamed, prideful, or simply indifferent. But I didn't chase after him. I didn't check on him. I didn't wonder whether he was eating or paying his bills or keeping the house clean. For once in my life, I let him face the consequences of his own choices. One rainy afternoon, Denise came into the bakery holding her umbrella like a crooked staff, her shoes squeaking on the floor. She shook off the rain and leaned on the counter. "You haven't mentioned Malik in a while," she said. I shrugged gently. "I haven't thought about him in a while." She studied me carefully. "Does that bother you?" I paused, tracing a circle on the counter with my fingertip. "No," I said finally. "It heals me." And it was true. My heart wasn't hardening. It was breathing. But time has a way of circling back to the things we think we've outrun. Just as the bakery began settling into a comfortable rhythm, just as I felt rooted in my new life, something unexpected happened. A customer walked into the bakery one Friday morning carrying a wrinkled newspaper. She waved it excitedly in the air. "Miss Jefferson, you're in the news again." She laid the paper on the counter, and there I was. Not in a small column this time, but in a full article with a bright photo of me holding one of my pies. The headline read, "At 70, Bronx baker finds sweet success with her homemade creations." My heart raced. In the photo, I looked happy, genuinely, deeply happy, in a way I didn't recognize from my life before. But beneath the rush of excitement, a quieter thought tried to surface. Would Malik see it? And if he did, what would he feel? I pushed the thought away and forced myself to focus on the customers. That evening, as I locked up the shop, the air felt heavier than usual, expectant like the moment before a storm. I didn't know then that the article would find its way to Malik, that he would read it late at night, alone in the house I had left behind, that he would see my smiling face, not weary, not exhausted, not bending, but radiant. I didn't know it would shatter him. I didn't know he would finally wake up. But that awakening was coming, and when it arrived, it would force us both to confront everything we had been running from, and it would lead him straight to my bakery door. I didn't know exactly when the article reached Malik, whether it was sent to him by someone trying to be helpful, or whether he stumbled upon it accidentally while scrolling through his phone, searching for distraction from a life that was beginning to feel too heavy. But I learned later that he read it during a sleepless night, the kind of night where the silence inside a house becomes unbearable, echoing every regret, every unresolved wound, every choice made without thought for the consequences. What mattered was that at some point, in the middle of that lonely night, he saw my face smiling back at him from a newspaper screen. And it shook him. While he stared at the article, I was waking up early in my Bronx apartment, preparing for another day at the bakery. Life had settled into a rhythm that soothed me, rising at dawn, stretching my stiff joints, warming the ovens, mixing ingredients before the neighborhood stirred awake. I found comfort in the routine, in the soft glow of the ovens lighting Denise's old kitchen, in the quiet companionship of early morning. Baking had become a ritual of healing for me, each recipe a thread sewing back pieces of my identity. What I didn't know was that on the other side of the city, Malik was sitting alone in the living room, surrounded by dirty dishes and unpaid bills, staring at the screen as if it were a window into a life he had never thought his mother could live without him. While I was measuring flour for a fresh batch of cinnamon rolls, he was measuring the consequences of a lifetime of entitlement. While I cracked eggs into a mixing bowl, he felt something crack inside himself too. Pride, perhaps, or denial, or the stubborn belief that I would always be waiting for him no matter how he treated me. But I didn't know any of this yet. My world had grown bigger than him, and his absence no longer carved holes in my day. That morning, the bakery bustled. When I unlocked the door, a small crowd was already waiting outside. Mothers with strollers, teenagers smelling faintly of cologne, grandparents leaning on canes, young couples holding hands, all lined up patiently. They greeted me like family, and each greeting reminded me I had created something meaningful, something that belonged entirely to me. Inside, the sound of conversation mixed with the clatter of utensils, the hiss of espresso machines, and the warm laughter of neighbors sharing early morning gossip. I loved watching them interact, seeing strangers leave with friendships forming over slices of pie or warm muffins. The bakery wasn't just a shop anymore. It was a place where people came to feel comforted, nourished, held. A place where my story lived quietly in every corner. Late morning, while I was icing a fresh batch of lemon cupcakes, the bell over the door chimed. I didn't look up at first. The bakery was always busy, and I kept my focus steady. But something in the hush that fell over the room made me lift my head. Malik stood in the doorway. For a moment, I didn't recognize him. The man who entered the bakery that day was not the soft, lazy, overgrown child I had raised. This version of my son looked older, thinner, worn down by something heavier than time. His clothes were wrinkled, his shoulders slumped, and there were dark circles beneath his eyes, signs of nights spent wrestling with echoes he could no longer ignore. The customers turned to look at him, but their stares didn't seem to register. He looked at me, and only me, as if the rest of the world had dissolved. "Mom," he whispered. It was barely audible, but it shook me so deeply that for a moment I couldn't breathe. He took a hesitant step inside, his eyes sweeping the bakery with a mixture of disbelief and awe. I wondered if he felt like he was trespassing a place built without him, a life that thrived despite his absence, a mother who had survived after he stopped seeing her. When he reached the counter, he didn't speak right away. His lips trembled, as if he were trying to form sentences but found only fragments. I saw the article," he finally said. "I didn't even know. I didn't know you were doing all this." I wiped my hands on my apron, steadying myself, not because I feared him, but because the moment carried the weight of years we had both wasted. Standing before him, I felt stronger than I had ever felt in his presence. A quiet strength, firm but gentle, rooted deeply in the life I had reclaimed. "What did you expect?" I asked softly. "That I would stay frozen in time because you needed me to?" He flinched at that. His eyes dropped to the floor like a child caught in a lie. "No," he said, his voice cracking. I don't know. I thought you were fine. I thought you were happy with me. I didn't realize how much I hurt you." A long silence stretched between us, heavy but not suffocating. It was the kind of silence where truth finally finds room to enter. "For years," I said, "I convinced myself that your happiness was enough. I gave you everything I had, Malik, more than I should have. I didn't teach you to be responsible because I thought if I made your life easy, you wouldn't feel the pain of losing your father. I tried to protect you from everything, but in doing so, I protected you from growing." "I know," he murmured. He swallowed hard. "I know I took advantage of that. I know I took advantage of you." The thing about confessions is that they often arrive too late to undo the damage, but just in time to prevent more. This one felt like that. "I didn't realize it until you left," he said. "The house was empty. Everything was on my shoulders for the first time. I didn't know how to do anything. Not laundry, not bills, nothing. I thought you'd come back the next day. I waited. I cleaned. I tried cooking. I even bought groceries, but everything went bad because I didn't know how to use half of it. Then people started coming to the house for the power bill and the water bill, and the roof leaked and the toilet broke, and He took a shaky breath. "I realized how much you did for me, how much of your life you spent carrying me. I was angry at first, not at you, but at myself. And then I felt ashamed. Mom, I was so ashamed." His voice broke on that last word, and suddenly he wasn't the man who had told me to clean a bathroom. He wasn't the man who lounged on the couch while I worked myself to exhaustion. He was just the scared boy I had once held in my arms, the one who cried at night after Samuel died, the one I had tried so desperately to protect. But there was a difference now. He wasn't leaning on me for comfort. He was standing alone, vulnerable, exposed, determined to face the truth of who he had been. "I'm sorry," he whispered, tears gathering at the edges of his eyes. "I'm so sorry." For a moment, those words were a balm I didn't expect. But they weren't enough to change everything. Apologies don't undo years of neglect or entitlement, but they create a bridge, small, fragile, and tremulous, that both sides must choose to cross. "I'm glad you came," I said quietly. "But I don't live in Brooklyn anymore, and I'm not coming back." He nodded slowly, as if he had already prepared himself for that. "I know," he said. "I can see that now. This," he gestured around the bakery, "this is your life, something you built for you, something I didn't even know you wanted. But I want you to know, I'm trying. I really am. I got a job, a real job, sales supervisor at an appliance company. It's not glamorous, but I show up every day. I'm learning things I should have learned years ago." I felt something inside me loosen, not forgiveness exactly, but acceptance. acceptance that he was changing, acceptance that he might finally become the man I had always hoped he would. "That's good," I said gently. "I'm proud of you for that." He inhaled shakily. "I also hired a cleaning lady. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I needed the help. I'm trying to keep the house in order, and I'm saving up to fix the plumbing." A strange sense of tenderness washed through me, not the old tenderness that had made me overlook his flaws, but a new one that came from seeing him try. "That's part of growing," I said, "learning to carry your own weight." He nodded again, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. I needed to tell you that I'm sorry. I didn't appreciate you, Mom. I didn't see you. I only saw what you did for me, not who you were." His words pierced me, but they also healed something raw inside me. "I see you now," he whispered. "I really do." The bakery was quiet. Customers watched us from a respectful distance, sensing the gravity of the moment. Denise stood in the doorway to the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron, her eyes soft but unwavering, like a guardian silently witnessing a long overdue reckoning. "I'm glad you see me," I said. "But you have to understand something, Malik. I didn't leave to punish you. I left to save myself. And I can't go back to the woman I was." "I don't want you to," he said quickly. "I want you to be who you are now. I want to be part of your life, but not in the way I was before. I want to earn your respect, and I want to give you mine." I studied him carefully. The sincerity in his eyes was unmistakable, raw and trembling. "You can visit," I said, "if you want to. You can be part of my life, but you need to keep growing. You need to stay responsible. You need to keep choosing the man you say you're becoming." "I will," he promised. "I swear I will." We stood there, mother and son, separated not by anger anymore, but by growth. For the first time in his life, Malik didn't look at me as someone who owed him anything. He looked at me with respect. We embraced gently, not the desperate, clinging embrace of the past, but a new one, cautious yet hopeful. As he left the bakery that day, I felt something lift inside me, the last remnants of fear, guilt, and doubt. I had survived the pain of leaving, but now I was surviving the pain of being seen. And oddly, that felt even more powerful. Over the next year, Malik kept his promise. He worked steadily, paid his bills, and visited regularly. He apologized more than once, but only when necessary, not as a plea for forgiveness, but as acknowledgement of growth. He even introduced me to a woman named Monique, kind and grounded. The sort of person who understood life's weight without being crushed by it. When they married, I baked their wedding cake, a 3-tiered masterpiece with buttercream swirls and delicate edible flowers. As they cut the first slice, Malik whispered, "I wouldn't be here if you hadn't left." And for the first time, I believed him. Months later, when they welcomed their baby girl, Malik called me crying, asking if they could name her Clara. I said yes. It wasn't about redemption anymore. It was about legacy. The woman I once was had disappeared in the shadows of a life spent serving. But the woman I had become, strong, steady, and self-chosen, was finally alive. And I still had one part of my story left to tell. I used to believe that the hardest part of my life was raising Malik alone after Samuel died. But looking back now, standing in the doorway of my bakery as the sun dipped behind the Bronx skyline, I realized something unexpected. The hardest part had never been the sacrifices, the exhaustion, or the years spent putting myself last. The hardest part was remembering that I was allowed to exist beyond those roles, that my story didn't end when motherhood began, or when widowhood reshaped my world, or even when Malik's entitlement nearly consumed the last soft pieces of me. My life was not defined by what I lost. It was defined by what I reclaimed. And nowhere was that more clear than the day little Clara, my granddaughter, was placed in my arms for the very first time. She arrived on a warm Saturday morning in late spring. Monique had gone into labor late the night before, and Malik called me at dawn, breathless and trembling, to tell me they were at the hospital. The minute I heard his voice crack with emotion, I knew he was still growing. Not just as a man, but as a father, a real father. One who had learned the brutal lessons of neglect and responsibility the hard way. One who understood finally that love without gratitude turned sour. I arrived at the hospital 2 hours later, the hallways filled with the familiar scent of disinfectant and the low hum of conversation. Malik saw me first. He looked exhausted, cheeks wet, hair messy, But when he hugged me, it was with the kind of tenderness I had once believed he was incapable of. "She's here, Mom," he whispered. "She's perfect." And then he led me inside. Monique was resting, her face glowing with equal parts exhaustion and joy. She smiled softly when she saw me. "Your family," she said. "Come meet her." And there she was, a tiny, wrinkled, sweet-faced miracle wrapped in a lavender blanket. Her eyes were barely open, her mouth puckered in sleep, her little fists curled tightly as if holding on to the promise of the future. Malik lifted her gently and placed her in my arms. "This is Clara," he whispered. My breath caught. My vision blurred. I felt my knees weaken with a rush of emotion so powerful I thought it might sweep me away entirely. I had imagined this moment in quiet, hopeful corners of my heart, but reality was so much deeper, so much heavier in the best way. "She's beautiful," I whispered, brushing a fingertip along her cheek. "She's named after the strongest woman I know," Malik said softly. "The woman who taught me everything, even when I didn't deserve it." His words washed over me like warm sunlight breaking through storm clouds. All the years of pain, sacrifice, tears, and self-betrayal softened in that moment, reshaped into something gentler, something that finally felt like closure. Holding my granddaughter, I felt the past and future folding into each other like the layers of dough in one of my pies. Distinct, imperfect, but part of something whole. I didn't stay long that morning. Monique needed rest, and Malik needed to learn the first sacred rituals of fatherhood without me hovering. Instead, I returned to the bakery. I unlocked the door, turned on the lights, and stood in the center of the shop as the smell of flour, sugar, and vanilla rose around me like a familiar embrace. But something was different. I felt different. The bakery had once been a symbol of survival, then of reinvention, then of pride, but today it felt like a legacy. It felt like something I could hand down. Not the work itself, but the meaning behind it. The courage to create something of your own. The strength to rebuild after breaking. The wisdom to choose yourself even when others do not. That afternoon, customers flowed in and out. Familiar faces, new faces, children who pressed their noses against the display cases, elders who insisted the cobbler reminded them of their childhood. And in every interaction, I saw reflections of the woman I had been and the woman I had become. Around closing time, Denise arrived, carrying a bouquet of sunflowers. "For the new grandmother," she said proudly, placing the flowers on the counter. I laughed through tears I didn't realize were forming. "How did you know?" "Please," she scoffed. "Your voice carries through the phone. I could hear your heart smiling." We sat together in the quiet shop after the last customer left. The air was warm, the ovens cooling behind us, the city settling into its evening rhythm outside the window. "You've changed a lot, Clara," Denise said, sipping her tea. "I had no choice," I replied. "If I didn't change, I wouldn't have survived." She nodded. "Sometimes life breaks us so we can rebuild the right way." I looked at her, at the bakery, and at everything around me. I used to think I had to suffer to be a good mother. And now I know I can love without losing myself. I can give without disappearing, and I can walk away if staying means shrinking. Denise smiled. "You saved yourself." "And in saving myself," I whispered, "I saved Malik too." The next months were some of the happiest of my life. I balanced the bakery with visits to Brooklyn and shared tender moments with baby Clara. Malik grew steadier, more responsible, more attentive. He'd call me for advice, not to ask me to do something, but to ask me how to do it. How to soothe a crying baby. How to cook his favorite meals. How to balance bills with savings. How to be a partner to Monique. How to be a man. And sometimes he'd say, "Mom, I'm sorry for who I used to be." And every time I'd answer, "You're becoming who you're meant to be now. That's what matters." But no matter how much better he became, I never returned to the woman I had been before I left. I never gave up my independence, never allowed him to lean so heavily that I disappeared again. Instead, we built a new relationship, one rooted in boundaries, respect, and honesty. One day, as I sat in the bakery decorating cupcakes shaped like tiny sunflowers, Malik walked in carrying little Clara on his hip. She reached for me instantly, babbling and squealing in delight. As I lifted her into my arms, Malik watched me with a soft smile. "Mom," he said, "I just need you to know that you leaving saved my life." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "If you hadn't walked out that night, I never would have learned to stand up. I never would have become a husband, or a father, or even a man. I hated you for leaving at first, but now I thank you for it. I held him with my eyes, feeling the truth of his words like a warm weight in my chest. I didn't leave to hurt you, I said. I left to heal myself. And that healed me too, he whispered. And for the first time, I felt no guilt, only peace. After they left that afternoon, I sat alone in the bakery with a cup of tea, letting the quiet settle around me like a soft blanket. The ovens hummed, the lights glowed, the air smelled of sugar and possibility. I thought of Samuel, of everything he had meant to me, and I wondered if he would be proud. A gentle warmth bloomed in my chest. I believed he would be. Years had passed since he died, but he lived in every choice I made to choose kindness without sacrificing myself. He lived in the strength I rediscovered. He lived in the son who finally grew up. And he lived in the granddaughter who now bore my name, a symbol of the love that had endured through decades of grief, mistakes, and transformation. I closed the bakery early that afternoon and walked outside. The sun was setting, painting the street in gold. Children played on the sidewalk, their laughter echoing between the buildings. And for the first time in a long time, I felt not just alive, but whole. I looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you." Not to anyone in particular, not to fate, not to God, but to myself, for choosing to walk out of that house, for choosing to build a life at 70, for choosing to reclaim my name, my purpose, my future, and for choosing, finally, to be free. My story didn't begin with betrayal, and it didn't end with grief. It began the moment I realized my worth wasn't tied to how much I could give, but how deeply I could live. And as I walked home that evening, the city glowing around me, I knew my life was no longer defined by what I had endured. It was defined by what I had become. What would you have done in my place? Tell me where you're listening from. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you'd like to support more stories like this, don't forget that super thanks is always appreciated. With heartfelt greetings, until next time.